It's time for another edition of Zach Miller Says. We got the Swenk Master J himself, Jason Swenk, which is a pretty cool last name, and for him to leverage it, I definitely appreciate that. You guys can check him out. Swenk.it is the website. It'll be in the show notes. But Jason is a guy who's sold his business and then basically started a coaching business to teach people how he did what he did from a success standpoint, what he has produced. We talk about in this episode, and when he focused on something that I think is so good. He took this concept of, okay, this is what I want to do and this is what I don't want to do, and basically drew a big circle and says everything in the circle is what I want to do and everything outside of it is what I don't want to do. And when he started actually applying that to his life, amazing results happen. We talk about the NBAT, which is needs, budget, authority, and timing, and why significance is so important in your life. Totally agree with that. You know, he sold his business and it was miserable, and he realized that significance was so freaking important. And whenever he's having a bad day now, he looks back and says, you know, this is what I'm grateful for. So without further ado, the Swenk Master J himself, Jason Swenk. Let's go. How did you learn, or when did you decide to use your last name in kind of the way that you promote your business? Because you kind of play with it in a fun kind of way.
You know, I'm always looking for something unique. And it really goes back to my college days. No one ever knew my first name. They were always just like, "What's up, Swank?" And then, it just, I started looking up the term swank, meaning, the best and that kind of stuff. Not calling myself the best or anything like that, but, it's kind of like people saying like, "Oh, that's a swanky store," and that kind of stuff. I was like, well, let's just play with it. So I just changed my signature in my email one day and said, "Have a swank day." And then it just caught on, and people started being like, whatever their last name, they started saying that. And then I was just like, it's easy to remember. And I just started coming up with URLs like Swank It and Swank Me and just stupid things to stand out.
I love that. Do a lot of people would be discouraged from doing something that's a little different like that because it might not be the popular choice? I mean, do you care about things like that?
Well, I actually look for those things, right? Whenever anybody's zigging, I'm going to zag. I mean, that's the only way to stand out. It's just imagine you're walking into a room and everybody's yelling and you yell back, people aren't going to hear you. But if you walk into a room and everybody's whispering, just a conversation, if you're chatting, everybody's going to hear you because you're different.
Love that. I live in an area that's very conservative, very much, your chamber of commerce, you walk in, it's 100 suits. Then I roll in and I'm in jeans and a t-shirt. People are like, I'm like, so I'm exactly the same way. And I love that because I think if you want to stand out, you literally have to do the exact opposite of other people. Right. The tennis racket behind you, is that actually used?
No, that's just decoration, but I grew up playing tennis and played in college. So
it sounds like you miss your college days. Where'd you go?
Florida State. I'm trying to forget it right now. We're not doing so hot.
Okay. Florida State, obviously not the greatest of years recently in football. What did you learn in college that has prepared you kind of for the business life?
How to outsource. I outsourced all my homework, all my tests. And so I learned how to delegate.
I love that. So what do you outsource now? Because I think a lot of people are kind of terrified to outsource. Yeah. Like, I got to be.
Yeah. So we'll outsource the stuff that I'm not good at, right? Like I'm horrible at writing. I'm horrible at, project management. So I'll actually bring in people from the outside to actually, pick up my slack of the things I'm not good at. Many years ago, I remember I got to a point, I was running my digital agency, and it was a successful business. It was around 2 million at the time. And I just remember coming home every day, just completely miserable. And I remember my wife was like, one time she's like, well, just go get a job. And I almost got a job working for NASCAR as like the CMO. And I remember them asking me a question that changed everything for me. They asked me two questions. They go, what do you want to do every day? What don't you ever want to do ever again? And it just made me thinking. So I went home that night and I drew on a piece of paper, a big circle. And everything in the circle, I said, this is all the stuff I love doing. Everything outside the circle is the stuff I'm doing now that I don't want to do. And so everything on the outside, I said no, or I found ways to do it. And I realized I didn't need to take a job. I can actually do it in my agency. And we changed everything around and just kept growing and growing.
So give me an idea of what was inside that you wanted to do.
Well, managing clients, project management. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the things of like, I wanted to set the vision and work with an amazing team. I wanted to coach and mentor my leadership team, but I didn't want to coach and mentor everybody in the company, right? I also wanted to create content. I wanted to be the face. I wanted to assist sales, but not do all of sales, right? So then I had to figure out, okay, I need to bring in salespeople to, knock on doors, go through the yellow pages. Those are not just the things you sit on that you make you taller. They used to have numbers in it that you could actually call. So,
and sometimes they still work. I don't know. So I've done agency world. I've been in that world many years ago, many moons ago. But I consult just like with you, with other agencies as well. And oftentimes I believe that agencies cannot scale other than with people. Do you believe that?
No, you can scale without people. Look, there's two ways to scale. You can charge more, right? Or you could do more services. But you can charge more if you figure out how can we deliver more value. And that sometimes doesn't equate to bringing on more and more people. So I always looked at it that way of going, all right, well, and what a lot of businesses would tell me, they'd be like, well, I can't charge any more to the current clients. I'm like, exactly. I'm like like in the old, what movie was that? Like Grumpy Old Men. He's like, pass the spoon, or no, it was Coming to America. Pass the spoon. And he's like, ha, right? And I'm like, you don't need your existing clients right now. Go after the clients that can pay you a lot more. I realized this very early. Well, maybe not early on, maybe in mid of my career. I remember I had a hard time saying no. I remember this one prospect coming to me. He was a complete jerk. And I was like, I didn't want to tell him no. I would just be like, all right, our websites at the time were like 10 grand. And I was like, well, I'll tell him 80. He's going to say no. And he said, yes. I'm like, oh, crap. But then it gave me that belief. There are people that will pay that much more. And then that's how we just kept scaling, not just based on people.
Always a good way to do that as well. I remember Aaron Walker introduced us a few months ago, and I was super excited about that. So I started following you, some of your stuff that you did, and I actually took notes on this. And I told you before the call that I don't normally do this, don't normally take notes from a video that I see from like the first time, but this one got me. And so I appreciate it. And so it was basically a funny little video that you put together, and you have a lot of good and clever videos, but it was around the concept of don't just say, hey, I'm checking in or following up with someone because, well, basically it doesn't work. And then you had 3 or 4 different kind of things to do instead. Do you remember that? Can you walk me through kind of what that is?
Yeah. So usually if you don't set up the call the right way and you send the proposal out to people, you're going to fail, because you're just going to be like, well, why are these people not calling me back? And then what you're going to do is you're going to be like, oh, I need to build my pipeline. So, hey, Zack, I'm just calling to check in, which is basically saying I have nothing to offer you and I'm begging you to give me money that I'm kind of questioning, right? And so what I always tell people in the very beginning when you're chatting with a prospect, after you qualify them, you have to figure out, what are they wanting? What is their biggest issue? What's the impact that issue is causing if they solve it or they don't? And how important is it to them? So then my follow-up strategy would be like, hey, Zack, I haven't heard from you in a while. Have you fixed that $1 million lead generation problem? And then I would shut up and you'd be like, no. I'm like, whoa, is that important to you? And you're like, yeah. I'm like, well, why haven't you solved it? Like, is there anything I can help you with? What can I answer for you? Are you really serious about solving this? And most of the time they'll be like, well, yeah, thanks for calling and let's go. Or you can call them up and say, hey, Zack, I wrote this I did this podcast interview of that I think that will relate to you about, how you can solve this lead generation problem that you have. And you just kind of jab them a little bit. right? You're helping them rather than just calling them up and saying, hey, you made a decision yet?
You're guiding the process. You're guiding them through the process that you want by hitting and hinting at things that you already know are their trigger points.
That's right.
Yeah. Are you professionally like sales trained? Because I mean, you just learned that from a lot of wins and a lot of losses with you.
A lot of mess ups. That's how I've learned it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems to have worked well. You talked about qualifying a prospect. It's specifically because you do a lot of work with agencies. How does one kind of qualify a prospect to understand that they actually could become a client?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about figuring out the right prospect. I always joke around with people and saying there's no such thing as a bad agency client or even a bad client. It's always comes down to they're either a bad prospect or a bad process. And most of the time you can you can avoid them in the bad prospect. And so I always like to figure out this in the first 10 minutes. And I would always train my salespeople to do this. And it's called NBAT. Need, budget, authority, and timing. Need, budget, authority, and timing. And so I'd say, all right, what do you need? And this is really easy. Like, and a lot of stuff I'm going over is common sense, but you just got to make a common practice. We all forget about it, right? What do you need? Like, does it match up with what I do? Like, if you need me to mow your yard, sure, I can mow your yard, but that's not matching up with what I need. And then quickly I go into what's your budget for your need? And a lot of people will skip this, or about like whenever I'm speaking on stage, I'll be like, all right, how many people asked for the budget? About 50%. Like, all right, cool. Out of that 50%, keep your hands up. How many people are actually able to get the budget? And maybe like 10%. And I'm like, all right, so then what do you do? And they're like, well, we just move on. I'm like, you can't move on, right? I'm like, and so like, this is how I would get the budget 99% of the time. I'd be like, cool. What do you think, Zach? You tell me. When I say, what's your budget? What do you think is the most common answer?
As little as possible.
Yep, little as possible. I don't have a budget. You tell me, right? And so I'd be like, cool, I love working with people that don't have a budget. So then I can, do all kinds of amazing tests for you and we can figure it out. And then I shut up and you're like, right? Their face like goes all down. And then I kind of roll into what always works. And the first play has to work with your personality, right? But the second one will always work. And like when you said as little as possible, be like, all right, well, Zach, what is as little as possible? I need to know some kind of range. Are you trying to stay around and start with a high number? Are you trying to stay around 100,000, 80,000, 70,000, 50,000? What is it? And the reason why I'm starting with a high number is basically our psychology is going to remember the first thing we hear. So if you roll out with 1,000, they're always going to associate you to 1,000. And so I want to find some range. So then after I figure out the range, or if they can't tell me, then I'll be like, I might not be the best fit for you. And I'm willing to walk away. Perfectly fine with that.
And higher number two, so that if it ends up becoming less than that, they think of that higher number first, and then they're like, oh, I'm getting a deal out of that type of thing?
Correct. Yep. And then the next thing after you figure out the budget is the authority. Am I talking to the authority? I just got off a call and I think I sniffed these people out. I go, well, what's the budget for what you're trying to do? And he didn't know. And I started was like, I need to know some kind of range. Still didn't know. I'm like, all right, well, cool. Who would know? Well, that's the CEO. Cool. What's the CEO's name? He didn't know it. I'm like, alarms going off. Woo!
He doesn't know who he works for?
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I meet with this. The CEO's tasked me with this. And I'm like, you don't know the CEO's name. I'm like, BS meter galore. Like, maybe I'll just do a fake proposal and send it to him, right? like just to mess with him.
Add
like,
a zero, and then if it works,
$1
I mean, that could be crazy.
Yeah. And so figure out the authority. And the easiest way to figure out the authority is how does your overall need match up with your long-term company objective? If they can't answer that, then you figure out who can answer that, and then we can roll in. And then the last part is timing. How fast do you want it? And if it's like, I want the Death Star website tomorrow, and you're talking to, Darth Vader, right? You're going to turn Darth Vader down. Yes, I have dolls in my office, I guess. Called Darth Vader doll. So that doesn't count. I'm not that kind of a freak. But no judging. No judging if you have dolls. And so then after you have the timing, then you can, roll into, qualifying the right prospect.
Very cool. Agency is where now? You've sold it, got not out of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We sold to a company called Proficient,
Okay.
and they're on the NASDAQ. So still operating, just different name.
The transition from selling to doing what you're doing now, how long of a time gap is that, and what did you do in between?
Yeah. So when we sold, I stayed on with the agency that bought us for 9 months. My tour duty was for 2 years, but we actually sold it again. So my tour duty ended quicker. So even better, because I hated it. I just couldn't stand it. I can't work for someone. I'm broken. They would either had to fire me or sell, which I'm glad they sold. So they didn't have to fire me, because I'm not a quitter. Like, I've been fired from every single job I've ever owned. And I figured out what it is I'm not a quitter. Like, I have to make someone fire me so I can go do something else. And so we sold. And then I thought the grass was going to be greener on the other side of doing the service work. So I started doing an iPhone app, taking pictures of everything that you ate, gives you a visualization. Hated it. Shut that down because I can't market or sell anything I don't believe in. And then I was just lucky enough, maybe a year later, of just kind of being completely depressed, not knowing what I'm going to do. I had old competition reach out and were like, "Hey, how'd you build a big agency? How'd you sell it? How'd you work with AT&T and Aflac and Lotus Cars?" And I started helping people out for free, and I was good at it. And then I just started. My wife's like, "Why don't you create a business out of it?" And so that's how we are here today.
Was the sale enough money to basically retire?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will hear that and say, well, why would you want to do anything else? Yet you're miserable.
Significance. Like I realized, when we were building the agency and always thinking about selling, right, or all the money you're making, money is not anything really, right? Like, money can't buy you health, can't buy you more time, right? It just can buy you some cool stuff, cool experiences. But when I sold, I didn't have that significance of my team anymore. I didn't have that self-worth because I associated everything that I did with the agency, and then I sold it. So I basically felt like I sold myself, and I was lost. And then when I started helping people and having them get success, it gave me significance back. And also too, I like the process of making money. Like, I love building and creating. It's just fun. Like, I always laugh at people who are like, "You must not have been successful at doing this. Like, why are you selling your stuff?" I'm like, "Well, because I like it. Like, I like making money, stupid."
So you just said that money wasn't it, but that you like making money. What's the difference there?
The process of it, right? Like, I love building. Like, on the other side of this wall in my basement is this huge train set. Like, it's monstrous, right? And so, like, when I sold, I just kept, like, before we sold the agency, I would just come down at night to relax, and I would just build stuff. I like building stuff and building, marketing and seeing what works, and then being able to, like, oh, wow, someone gave us money for this, regardless. Like, if it's $99 or a penny, someone trusted us to give us money, meant our stuff is actually working. And that's just the cool part.
Is there something like a bucket list item that you haven't done yet that you want to do, whether business or personal?
I've done a lot. We've bought a lot of land out in Colorado that we're building right now to move out there. And that was always my bucket list item, to buy that. And, I think it's just more about just spending time with my family and creating amazing experiences. There's something that I would buy or experience. Like, not really. Like, I think it always just changes.
You talked about love and doing what you do. You have to love doing it. I don't think enough people talk about that, because then we're miserable. And so I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we're raised, maybe. Was there a time when you started recognizing that if I don't love this, I not only suck at it, but like I can't do it?
Yeah. That time when I was interviewing with NASCAR and they asked me those questions, right? Because look, if you don't have passion in your business, and even Steve Jobs said this, right? If you go back to that famous speech that he did, I think in front of USC, he's like, business is going to be tough. You're going to go through tons of hard things. And if you don't have passion, might as well not do it. Or if you get up every morning and you hate it and you've said it over and over again, like, why do it? Like, I remember back, running the agency, there were so many miserable times at the time that we thought were like, we'll never want to go through it. Those are all the times that I remember and I actually appreciate for all that. So I always tell everybody too. And then once we reached the pinnacle, then I was like, okay, now what? So like, I enjoy the journey now, right? More than anything. Like, when it's the same thing, if you guys follow Gary Vaynerchuk, he said like the day he buys the Jets is going to be the most depressing day, because that means in his mind, he reached the pinnacle. And you just got to enjoy what you're doing now. If you don't, like, I create so much pieces of content every week. If I didn't have passion for it, I wouldn't do it. And as soon as I lose the passion for it, I'll be working in Durango on the steam engines that they have, like real steam engines. You won't see videos from me. You just see me like in Greece working on a steam engine.
So in Gary Vaynerchuk's case, do you think that he really doesn't want to buy the Jets and he just uses that then?
Yep. Yeah.
So
he uses that as a goal. And if you watch some of the videos or chat with him every once in a while, he's like, I hope I don't, because that just means I reached the top, and then what? Now what? And I think you should always be, chasing your future self, not chasing someone else, because that means you're going to be someone else. Just chase your future self. So picture yourself in 5-10 years, whatever it is. And it's hard, right? I struggle with that. I'm like, where am I going to be in 5 years? Like, I don't know. But you have to constantly be competing with yourself versus anybody else.
That's good. Are you ever miserable now?
Every once in a while, sure.
And what do you do when you go through that scenario?
I think about, what am I grateful for? And it immediately switches.
Is that just an emotional thing where you can be thinking about it? Or like, do you have like, so for me, like I haven't necessarily had a job in like probably 10 years. Right. And so I have, every time I buy a new computer, I email myself this old document, which is me basically resigning from the worst job of my life. And so I look at that and go, oh, at least I don't have to be back at that, right? It's kind of like you don't want to be working for those people anymore, or work for those type of jobs. Like, is there a physical thing that you have that you can look at, or is it just something in your mind you think about?
I think of everything I'm grateful for. The heart's beating in my chest. I'm walking. My family's healthy. I'm able to do what I love every day. I just think of those things rather than, the dream squashers out on the internet, right? Or if like someone squeaks by and you don't get them results and they tell you suck, right? And then you have self-doubt, and you shouldn't have let that person in, but you broke the process. You broke the process. Yeah. And so then you just have to go, all right, let me switch this.
I literally wrote a post this morning basically saying, like, if you're not surrounding yourself by people that, are loving and thankful and they're like, and you have a bunch of haters, like, just remove the cancer from your life, because it's painful and you don't need to deal with that crap. And so I totally agree with that. So do you ever think about building another agency?
Yeah. Every once in a while. Yeah. When I sold, I was going to do it in the second year when my non-compete was done. But then I found this. I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, I get the most significance I've ever had, and I can affect more people now than I've ever been able to. And that's a lot, big thanks to, technology and social media and all the different things out there in order to allow us to reach people. So my significance level is at all-time high, and I love it. But I'll never say never. Like, there's a number of different opportunities out there right now that I may do. Who knows?
So if someone is watching the Swenk Master J right now, that's my new name for you, by the way, and feel free to use it. And they see that you've helped them through some of your wisdom so far. Like, what would your elevator pitch be to them on how they could work with you?
Yeah. So I work with, well, they have to be a little bit uncomfortable, with where they're at now, right? Because comfortable people don't make decisions to do things different. They just keep going about business. But if you're uncomfortable and you want to grow faster, then I might be able to help people. And I help them in 3 ways. I have online training, I have a mentorship where I work with them one-on-one, and then I have masterminds. And and I just put people in what they need, not what I want to sell them. And that's the biggest difference between everybody. If you guys ever sell anything or you're helping people out, figure out first, can you help them out? What do they need? And then just push them toward that. And if they can, great. And, so that's my elevator pitch.
I love it. We have similar hair. Have you always gelled your hair like that?
Yeah, I just never comb it. I don't even gel it. I literally wake up, I'm like, all right, it's done.
I love that. So we're recording this in the fall of 2018. Florida State, your alma mater, is not doing well.
Why you got to bring this up?
Because I mean, it's
this is going to be the thumbnail and then the Seminole logo.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, you live in Atlanta now?
I do.
Did you go to the Atlanta, or were you at the game last year, the Alabama-Florida State game?
No. So
that's kind of when it all started, right? I mean, like, that's when it was number 1 versus number 2, and like, it's just been.
Yeah, that all started. So I've stopped going to any games that are in Atlanta. And the reason being is every game I've ever gone to in Atlanta where my mighty Seminoles are playing, we've lost. And I just I don't want to take years off my life anymore.
So college is such an interesting thing. Obviously, you said you learned how to outsource there. Like, what do you still get from it now?
Well, it also taught me how to socialize and communicate, right? And it just chat with people. Before, I was kind of like in high school, I always felt like I had to drink to talk to people. And and college changed that, where I was able to figure out like who I was and what I wanted to do.
What did you study there?
Computers. I was the worst computer programmer you've ever met because I didn't know how to write a line of code.
So how many lines of code could you write now?
I could probably write hello world. That's about it.
What is Jason Swenk the best in the world at?
I don't know. I don't think I'm the best in the world. But that's something that we're chasing, right? Our ultimate goal is to be the number 1 resource in the world for agency owners and to provide a resource I wish I had. And I think anybody that's going to say they're the best in the world, they only have things to go down, right? Like, I want to constantly keep getting better and keep growing. And I don't want to be the pompous ass that says I'm the best anyway.
So you haven't been in agency world for a little while now. How do you stay up to date so that people that are hiring you can get up to date agency resources?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always love that question when people ask that. I've worked with over 1,000 agencies in the past 6 years in 42 countries. And so I'm able to see stuff I wouldn't have, even if I was still running my agency. So I always laugh at people when they say, oh, you've been out of the agency space and how could you help me and give me the latest strategies? I was like, I know more now. And plus, with our small team, we're actually cranking out more content than some of the bigger agencies could ever even dream of right now. And we've just, we're more ingrained now than ever before. And I love it.
How do you determine what content you should create and how long do you spend on it?
Well, when we create content, we don't spend that much time on it, right? It's more about what is our clients and our prospects actually struggling with now, and what do they want to transform into? And we just create content based on that. And we just literally brainstorm on topics, kind of like that video that you said, what was it? Stop sending the proposal, or, the check-in strategy. We'll just brainstorm on a topic and go, well, what's the outcomes we want from this? How can we educate the market? And how do we make it entertaining? That's always kind of the last part. some videos we do can't be entertaining. It just has to be like, or we're talking about cash flow today. And we're like, how can we make that entertaining? I guess we could, making it rain on people. I don't know.
Do you know Alan Branch from Less Everything?
No, never heard of them.
So they had sold, they created an accounting software called Less Accounting, I guess. And he was saying something along the lines of, everyone who sells accounting software would say our accounting software makes things easier. His whole tagline or kind of promo would be, all accounting sucks. All accounting software sucks. Ours just sucks a little bit less.
Oh, that's awesome.
So a lot of the stuff you're talking about reminds me of him. He's also from the South. So I thought maybe you guys knew each other.
No, that's cool. I want to hang out with this guy.
He is awesome. I'll connect you guys. What's something about you most people don't know about?
I ran an Ironman, and it took me 16 hours and 20 minutes to finish. And I did it with no training.
No train. Okay, so I just signed up. So I'm on this kick of doing things that scare the living crap out of me, and I just signed up for 70.3. So I signed up for a half an Ironman. Right? I think I can do the swim right now. I swam in high school, shoot a swim in college. I bike a ton right now. The run is the scary thing for me. I don't know. The ambition for me is not to do the full one, but like, what are some tips for someone who is trying to do half of it? I am training, but like looking back at it, what would you say? Like, oh, I probably should have done this.
Well, I should have probably trained for it. I probably could have finished a little faster, but I actually liked finishing about 30 minutes before they cut off, because everybody was drunk and everybody's at the finish line. So it was like I was a superstar. They're like, come on, big guy. Like, I'm 6'3" at 230. So they're like, come on, big guy. And I'm like giving them the finger as I'm going by. I'm like, call me big guy one more time. You're going to get punched. And I guess the biggest thing.
Legit, like literally give them the finger the whole time?
No, I wasn't. No. But mentally, I was like, screw you. I'm not that big. I'm just big boned. I'm a fat skeleton. And so the biggest thing I'll tell you is it's all mental, and don't think about and I approach life the same way. Don't approach the 73.2 or whatever it is as like, I got to finish 73. Just finish. I got to finish 1 mile at a time. That's it. And just do it one little, and just keep thinking of the end goal in order to motivate you. So every time, even when I still think about the end of finishing and them going, Jason Swenk, the newest Ironman, right? I still get chills. And so the whole way through, I kept thinking of what's the end? What's the end goal? And it kept driving me. And I just kept telling myself, okay, I can run the next 2 miles and then I'll walk 2. And then I'll run the next 2 and I'll walk. And just keep going. And it all matters about finishing. This is the only event I cared about the participation of finishing and not winning, right? Usually I'm like, if you're not first, you're last. Right. Like, I love that motto. But this was the only event I was like, I just need to finish.
Where'd you do it?
Florida, Panama City.
Oh, well, that's where Alan Branch lives from Les. So you guys could.
I grew up in Panama City, so yes,
he's like
definitely need to connect this.
He's literally changing that whole place. Okay, I definitely have to connect you guys now. Okay. So before I was lying, now I was really telling the truth. What's something we haven't talked about that you like to talk about?
It's a great question. I love Jeeps. I love off-roading.
You're a Wrangler kind of guy?
Oh, yeah.
What do you have now?
I have a 2017 Rubicon Hard Rock with 37-inch tires on it that we take out to Moab every year.
Very nice. I have an 11 Wrangler. So we're Jeep guys too. Best car ever. Can't imagine having something different.
Got the hair. I should have worn my glasses. I have similar glasses.
We're brothers, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Should talk to our moms.
We should. So we talked about Gary Vaynerchuk and his Jets moment. Do you have that, or that buying the Jets? Is there something like that for you, where like there's that big thing where you really want to do, or?
Well, I did it when I bought the land out in Colorado. But you know, but it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to buy when I sold, right? Like the first thing I bought was a bumper for my Jeep. It was like a $400 Jeep part. I was like, I just want a bumper. And everybody's like, what? Like, I was like, I didn't care. Like,
Right.
but when we found this land out in Colorado, I was like, this is it.
What kind of money was it? How much did you sell for?
Never tell anybody, but we were over 13 million in revenue.
Okay, so how do you guys figure out that number of what it's worth then? I'm respecting your question, but trying to like,
Yeah, it's
what are they
usually
talking?
a multiple of EBITDA. So like we were 45% profit margins. So you could, I guess you guys could guess kind of on multiples of that. So
Got it. If someone is running an agency right now and is uncomfortable using your words, and they're thinking about what that next step is, and they have a conversation with you, or they're listening to this, like before they call you, like what should they be thinking about? Like what should those next steps be?
well, you got to figure out what do you want. If you don't have any goals, like I can't help you. Like I'm just not going to be like, well, how can I? If you have one little problem, like okay, like I can fix that. But if you don't have any goals of where you want to go or understand why you want to actually get there, you know, those are kind of the requirements. And then be willing to put in the time and realize too, there's no silver bullet. Like I always love the people that sell the silver bullet. Like I just laugh. I'm like, yeah, here's the silver bullet and you're going to make millions. I always say, be like, look, I'll give you a ton of silver. You shape your own bullet the way you want. And only you can actually do that. And so it takes time, right? It's like, I cannot stand those people. And we all know who they are, who promise the world. Be like, you can drive my Lambos and Ferraris and stupid like that. I'm like, the people that talk about how much money they make are the ones that don't have it. I can promise you that.
I have an idea of who you're talking about, but it does take, right? I mean, we don't even have to name names. We're like, it takes a long time. It's just these things like, and if you're not willing to put in the work, then you're definitely not going to get it. Yes, there are outliers. Every once in a while, someone will somehow make it by being lazy, not putting in the work. But the
But they
majority of
won't be
us,
consistent. They won't stay there long. It's not sustainable.